childhood up, we have had to conform to a certain social game. And so we're in a constant state of competition. Good assistance, secret. You can't make a mistake.
Welcome, everybody, to Friends of Failure. I'm your host, Sam, and this is my co-host, Megan.
Heyo.
And I'm super duper excited to introduce you guys to myself and Megan. We're doing another one-on-one EP, as the kids would say, or episode, or podcast.
Yeah, I don't think they say that.
The problem is I always joke about this is what the kids say. I don't know any kids or what they say, so
you're just making it up.
I'm just lying to the whole world about what the kids are saying. Wow. Hey, so yeah, hey, all right, and we're on with that. Like, Sam's just a liar. Megan, how are you today? I know you're in H-Town.
I am in H-Town. I'm in my childhood home. There's a baby picture of my dad back here. I'll decide if I blur it out. I don't know if he needs to be anonymous. Yeah. I'm back here to my brother's having a baby. Well, he's not physically having a baby. His wife is, but there's a baby in the mix, and I'm on standby. So
it's funny because I feel like it was necessary that you clarified that it wasn't in fact your brother. Is it pooping out a baby? Like, that's how babies happen, right? You poop them out.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I wouldn't know. I've never done it before, but I'm pretty sure I have a pretty solid understanding of how all that works.
I've been told it's like an upset tummy and you just poop it out. That easy. Or hard, I don't know.
Oh man, you're in the bathroom just screaming to your significant other, "We had a baby." They're like, "I'm sorry, what?" And you're like, "I just pooped it out."
Look right.
Dude, if that's how that all worked as a species, I know it would be normal because we'd all be doing it, but God, if that just changed overnight and that's how it all of a sudden worked, I'd be done.
That was it. That'd be the.
Well, I would email Elon Musk and be like, "Hey man, sign me up for that little Mars mission that you're talking about."
Get me out of here.
hey, look, best case scenario, the rocket doesn't make it out of the atmosphere, and that's taken care of. Or worst case, yeah, worst case, I go to Mars, and we're definitely not populating because I'm going to convince everyone on the shuttle there will be no pooping on this space flight. Okay. Zero, no chance.
I'm pretty sure we joked about a poop episode in the pre-planning, and here we are, full circle.
All right, well, now we have to explain that so people don't use their imaginations. Yeah, you are 100% right. So what our topic for today is how kind of the journey of health and the failures that we come across. So I definitely wanted to speak on to some of my failures and my fitness journey. And if you're watching this, you can tell that I have this like beautiful glowing hue to my face. You know what? I'm just going to show anybody that's watching this right now. Look at this. Oh my God.
Farmer's tan. That's all we have to say. Yeah.
Yeah, dude. So I messed up and I got sunburned. I knew I was going to be outside on Saturday, but I didn't know I was going to be outside that long, and it was overcast, which I think also made it worse.
You miscalculated. Yeah,
100,000%. The worst part about it is I'm pretty sure at one point my buddy was like, "Hey, I'm pretty sure I have sunscreen." I was like, yeah,
I'm fine.
Yeah. Now I look like I'm from the movie Cocoon, and my face is coming off, and I'm gonna be young again. But so anyway, we're talking about like, hey, how are we gonna record this episode? And it's like, yo, I would love to kind of touch base on kind of like my health journey. And it came from, getting a sunburn. So it was like, all right, let's kind of brainstorm where we're going to come from with that. And I was like, you know what? I don't want to surprise you during the podcast. I'm just going to talk about how I just have diarrhea. Yeah, I have diarrhea all the time.
Constant.
And
flow.
Yet, yeah, all day. It's happening now. Yep, there he goes again. He's just lying about diarrhea and
I'm gonna have
oh
to put
my
some
god.
kind of disclaimer on this episode, like constant diarrhea talk.
Yeah. Yeah. Hey,
Potty
did you
mouth,
enjoy
literally.
yeah. Did you enjoy all the episodes leading up to this one? Great. Skip this one.
Let's make sure you
Next.
don't ruin that view.
Um, but yeah, super excited to be here. I do think it's kind of cool how technology allows us to do that, right? Like, I know you've been able to work from home more
Oh yeah.
because of 2020. I've been fortunate enough to be able to work from home as well. And now we're doing a podcast from home, and it's like dope.
Everything's from home. It's great. I'm wearing
Everything's from
pajama
home.
pants right now. Maybe. You don't know.
At least you're saying you're wearing pants. I'm not even gonna like deny it, you know.
God.
I haven't worn pants in weeks. No, I'm kidding. No
Just
one's
all your
coming to
pants
check
are
on
like
me.
cut into shreds in the corner somewhere.
Yeah. I just had like a celebration one day of like, I don't need pants.
You're like,
It
"Don't
was a
you
good
see
time.
pants?"
Now I just don't know how I'm gonna go get more pants. Oh wait, Amazon, right?
There you go. All solved.
Yeah. But yeah, hey, for real, people, wear sunscreen. It's not worth it long term. You'll definitely regret it. Um, one of my friends, he was like, holy moly. He was like, what happened? And I was like, man, I failed at adulting that day and I didn't put on sunscreen. And he was like, dude, he's like, look, I'm not here to lecture you, but he was like, I literally had to deal with like skin cancer at one point. And he was like, do not mess around with that. He's like, I was one of the fortunate ones. And I was like, I feel you. And, I know you kind of get it too. Right.
Oh,
And it's like, because we all want to believe like, oh, not me. But they're like, no, literally, that's what I
definitely
thought
you.
too.
Yeah.
So if you're on a health journey of any sorts, just
Start
be
with your
aware, man.
skin. Your skin is your largest organ, or whatever they like to say to freak people out. Yeah. It's
It's
gross,
called
but
the
it's true.
epidermis. All right. Okay.
Oh God.
All right.
This is where you start using science words.
The
They start
leg
out
bone's
right.
connected to the
Yeah.
elbow. No, Sam, it's not connected to the elbow. What are you talking about? The sternum's connected to the kneecap. No, wait. So like I've mentioned it before, at least I think I have, that I eventually decided a few years back that I wanted to pursue something fulfilling in my life, because I was doing on and off jobs after the Marine Corps, trying to just figure out like where I belonged after doing that
Yeah. That thing.
doing the experience, and I had a great time, but started with school. I was like, man, I need a break from this. I wasn't ready for it. I didn't even know why I was going to school, other than like I
That
felt like
they
I
tell you to
should.
do it. Yeah.
I mean, I don't disagree with it. Like if you can go to school and you're capable of keeping yourself in the zone, like you should do that probably. But I was like, nah, man. And I jumped around from different corporations and so many different variety of jobs, and I just was so underwhelmed with life, and it was depressing. I'm sure there would be people that would be like, no, it wasn't that life was depressing, you were depressed. And I'm like, well, could have fooled me. But so I got to a point where I was like, you know what, like F it, you might as well take a chance on yourself. And I was like, I've always enjoyed the gym. It was a big part of my life. It was something that I definitely didn't stop after getting out of the Marines. And so I took a chance on myself and pulled it off. I became a personal trainer. And um it's interesting because I've had conversations with people where they're like, hey, I want to utilize you as a resource. And I'm like, great. Like, that is why I'm here. I want to help people, personal trainer or not. Like, if I can even give you a small insight of the direction you should go, then like I would love to provide that. But what's funny is that sometimes I think people, they didn't meet me till after I was a personal trainer. So they just assume I was always a personal trainer. Like I was always in great shape.
The whole thing.
And like, dude, I worked out in high school and I worked out my chest. I ran at least 2 to 3 times a week, and I did forearms and biceps like any day that I could get the time to do it. I was like, that's the only thing that mattered. do like a little bit of squats, a little bit of leg press, run your heart out, biceps and chest.
Yeah.
And I wasn't even doing it right. Like, what do you mean there's multiple parts of the chest? And so like it's really funny to take the time to reflect on that of I didn't know what I was doing. I'm grateful that I had that kind of humble beginning of at least I knew what weights were. But when I got to the Marines, man, they were like, dude, you're 5'7" and you weigh like $145. Like how the they're like, this pack that we're gonna make you carry weighs over half of you. Like, what are you gonna do here? Like, you need to go to the gym. And I'm like, yeah, dude, let's do it. And then they're like, what are you doing? I'm like, running and arms and chest. And
Running
they're
and
like,
lifting the
oh,
thing.
yeah. They're like running arms and chest. Wow, buddy. And so I was very grateful that, they were teaching me how to do that. But even then, you have to have like these building blocks. And it's so funny how I didn't ever really worry about what I was eating because I didn't really have any issues that relied on being solved by diet. Right. So like if I wanted to just drink Mountain Dew like it was water,
You
there
could
was
get
no
away with
problem with
it.
that.
Yeah.
Yeah, I legitimately look back horrified of how did I not get diabetes? Or have I been living with like a small case of diabetes my whole life because
Probably. But
I kept the company Mountain Dew alive.
I think most men have done that at some point in their life. It's a similar trend. Yeah.
Yeah.
They got a
I
sponsorship, it didn't go well, and now they, have diabetes.
it's like the scene in Fight Club where the character Bob that you meet at the beginning is talking about how like he was juicing and he was like competing like bodybuilder or whatever, and like his whole life went downhill eventually because like you can't do it forever. Yeah, you can't drink Mountain Dew forever. At some point you gotta face the music, and I'm
Only have
grateful
one
that
Mountain Dew. Gotta cut it down instead of 3 a day.
yeah, they're like, oh, I only have one Mountain Dew a day. They're like, oh, okay. And you're like, yeah, I mean, those 2 liters are cheap. And like, dude, that lasts all day.
Whew.
Yeah. I didn't really have it that bad, but it's probably pretty close.
Makes my stomach hurt. Can't do it.
Dude, every once in a while, I'm like, I want a nostalgia, and I'll do like a shot of Mountain Dew, and I'm like vomiting
You're
because my
like,
body's
"Woo."
like, yeah, dude, this is not good for you, man. But it's like funny because I'm able to talk about that, and the thing is let's say you drink Mountain Dew every day for 25 years of your life. One day you can go, hey, I want to stop. I had family members that used to like smoke cigarettes or whatever, and one day they were like, maybe what's funny is maybe they weren't even stopping it for health reasons. They were like, I'm not going to spend money on this anymore.
Yeah, I mean, whatever reason works, but it's sometimes not health. Yeah. It's not the
Right.
driver.
Yeah. And so I just think it's interesting to kind of ponder on because when I got into personal training, I learned things about people that taught me about myself, and then they learned things from me where even if you have quite a bit of similarities of your journey, it's so different and unique to the person and their mindsets and their goals.
Yeah. And then with health, like it's extremely unique to your body type and your mental state and all of that. But then also like what you're predisposed to, which you have no control over.
Mm.
And my perspective is health is always taken for granted. Like you don't even think about it when you're young because you have it. Like it's just kind of part of life. And then the first time it's taken away, you're like, "Oh, that really sucks. That's not cool." And then you're like, "Better." You get back to something, or at least in my experience, and then you forget about it. You're like, "Ah, whatever. That's fine." And then it
Yeah.
gets taken away again. You're like, "Fuck, I remember this feeling and how awful it was." Like whether that's just, physical health or like an illness or something like that. No one really thinks about it until it's right in front of them, you know?
Yeah.
And
Dude, you're 100% right. And here's something that's funny to me about it. I I've had people like I've talked to people about like life insurance before, right? And it was like, look, dude, I don't have the money, or I don't want to spend the money on something that when I die, it goes to, whatever it goes to. And they're like, okay, cool, but like how are you protected if you get sick one day? And I'm like, I have like insurance with work or whatever. And they're like, no, man, I mean, like, what are you going to do if you get cancer? And immediately you're like,
You're like, I'm
cancer.
not gonna get that. Yeah.
But then they're like, yeah, dude, no one plans on getting cancer. And then you like sit there for a second, and I think about all the people in my family that have gotten cancer. Obviously, some of them were like smokers or whatever it was. They're drinking way too much Mountain Dew, and it's like, but so the point is that, it's really easy to go like, hey, not me, and so like we do these things where we're like, have you ever talked to anyone that's like you learn about them, whether they're like a coworker or a friend or whatever, and you find out that they're lactose intolerant, and then like
Then they'll go
sometime
eat cheese
later
in front of you.
sometime yeah sometime later they're drinking a glass of milk in front of you, and you go, aren't you like aren't
It's
you lactose
fine. Yeah.
intolerant?
They're
And they're
like,
like,
it's fine.
yeah, Sam, you remember how you were talking about how people poop out babies? Oh my gosh.
I've had friends that are like that, and like they know it's gonna fuck them up, and they set themselves up for failure. They're like, it's fine. I'm gonna have this cheese, and then I'm gonna be on the toilet for like 5 hours
Yeah.
later.
We
And
can
it's
Zoom,
worth
guys. They'll be
it.
fine. You don't have to
Yeah.
be in the bathroom. We can still hang out. Or like I know multiple people that they're allergic to chocolate, but it's not severe enough that like their throat swells up and they die. They just like break out in hives, and you're like, that seems horrific. And they're like, it's only about like a 2.5 hour reaction.
It reminds me of there's a Broad City episode where they go to like a nice restaurant and get lobster, and Alana's allergic to fucking lobster. And she just keeps eating it without saying that. And she's like, I have my EpiPen, it's fine. And then just blows the fuck up. And she's like, it's worth
One
it.
of my
I'm
favorite
feeding
episodes.
myself. And then they have to like heroically carry her out. It's fucking amazing. But yeah, that level, kind of.
Broad City is a very unique show, and it is not for everyone. But that friendship that they share is just so beautiful. And in that episode, it's funny because you probably go, there's three types of people that watch that show. The people that are like, this is a train wreck. Thank God I'm neither one of these people. There's the what are the two names? It's
Alana and Abby. Yeah.
Abby.
Yeah.
So it's like me, I think I was like, man, I want to
You
be
relate
free
to
spirit.
one. Yeah.
Yeah, I want to be free spirited like Alana. And it's like, but the reality is I'm Abby, where I'm like, hey, look, dude, like you're allergic to shellfish. You shouldn't be eating that. And like in the episode, she literally says like her logic of like, well, I have my EpiPen,
Yeah.
and I know how to ride the line, and then whenever I cross it, EpiPen. Dude,
Fucking Abby stabs herself. I forgot about that part. We're just describing a TV show episode at this point.
Hey, we're changing lives here, but so like the thing that's interesting about it is it's funny because we know people that have done it, or we do it ourselves, right? Like I'm trying to come up with my example. Thankfully, I'm not really allergic to anything.
Mine is like acidic food. It'll fuck me up real quick, but I love coffee. So that's like, the worst possible option.
It's pretty acidic.
It's pretty bad. So I've definitely got myself in scenarios where normally I have 1 cup a day, maybe 2, but there's some days where it's like 3 or 4. And then that's when my body's like, yo, bitch, this is not gonna work. Like, we're about to serve you papers. Everything's gonna hurt from like your stomach to your throat. It's not gonna be good. And then I just keep drinking that 4th cup, like, okay, and hate myself for like 2 days afterwards. But yeah, I think we all have our thing that we know will fuck us up, but we feel like the health cost is fine. So we're like, that's all right. I'll put up with it. But in reality, like the worst case scenario of that is I burn out my fucking esophagus because I have acid reflux so bad. And I'm like a hypochondriac, like deep down. I try to keep it hidden as much as I can. But I research stuff to that point of like, if I keep doing this, what is it gonna do? And then WebMD's like, you're gonna die yesterday. Like you're basically dead right now.
Yeah, you've already done effed up real bad.
Yeah, and then I'm like, okay, great. Gonna keep doing it, maybe a little more, and then go see a doctor. And then it's fine. Yeah.
Yeah, this is going to be a really interesting segue because I didn't want to just talk about physical health, but I think there are 3 things that everyone should focus on to try to find a balance. And balance is kind of an illusion because it's always fluctuating and flowing depending on your priorities, right? Especially priority of action. But so growing up, I was a little bitch. Like I could not even, my dad would put Tabasco on something. I'd be like, I have to leave the room. It's too spicy in here. Like I was that kid. Obviously, hopefully that's an exaggeration. You'll never know.
I'm still that kid. No, I'm still that kid.
Well, I don't know what happened other than becoming a glutton for punishment. Maybe part of it was the conditioning of the Marines and like where I was at in my life at the time. But I met up with a bunch of coworkers when I worked at AT&T, and I sat down with them and they ordered like a appetizer kind of plethora plate platter thing. And so there was ghost pepper mango wings. Ooh. I don't know why I was like, I'm going to try it. Either they were like, oh, come on, dude. And I was like, I don't do spicy. And they're like, come on, dude. So I did. Dude, I used to go once a week for a long time, and I would go get a plate of ghost pepper wings and ghost pepper mango. They were sweet and spicy, and I eat them. Well, my body wasn't super, it never had conditioning for spicy food. And so like I mean, I start sweating and like, my stomach is on fire depending on how hot I eat, which I've only taken it to the limit like 3 or 4 times. My body doesn't react well to it. Like, I don't think it's going to kill me, but like I legitimately suffer because it's just right. So what's funny to me is that I keep doing it because I'm like, it's not going to kill me, but I don't really know what's going on the inside. And I definitely can tell you, as bad as it is going in, it's super bad going out. And it's enough that my body is like, yo, dude, this isn't okay. And I'm like, yeah, dude, more cayenne pepper, like more, dude, I've taken it as far as eating, I've never like eaten a ghost pepper itself, but I've done like, like I've done some pretty hot things. Like I'll never forget a buddy of mine bought me Pain 100%. It's a hot sauce that you can buy. Yeah. And it tastes like metal. Some hot sauces do that where like whatever they have to use. Oh, so good. It tastes like a penny. When I tried it for the first time, I almost panicked because my brain's reaction was, oh shit, what have we done? As if it was like, this is pretty bad pain, not only all over your mouth and lips, but it's going into your body. Like you've swallowed this substance.
Yeah.
So what's interesting to me, weird segue, is like with mental health, I think we do the same thing. We're like, this isn't going to kill me, but we definitely pay consequences. And one of them is I love metal music. I was probably exposed to it a couple of times before, but somewhere around 2012, 2013, I heard a song. I remember the moment very clearly. It was actually Thy Art Is Murder had a song come out called Reign of Darkness. They had a music video. My brother sent me a link. It was like, check this out. And it was like late. I was in Okinawa, Japan, like in my little barracks room, whatever. And I was like, yo, what is this? And, so I looked up the lyrics because, it's metal music. It's like, rah, rah, rah. And I resonated at the time with the lyrics and just the feeling of it and the whole experience. Listened to it several times, and then I was like curious to check out the album, and then I started trying to find other things that I could enjoy. Where I think that relates is that yes, I enjoyed it. Yes, during certain parts of my life, it actually made me feel maybe less crazy, or maybe like the internal feelings that I had, like I wasn't alone,
like
because
outlet,
there are people,
a little bit, yeah.
There are people that are creating art, if you call music art, that would resonate with someone who's going through stuff or who is looking at the world from a darker perspective, right?
Yeah.
And the thing is as I've worked on myself, especially as of late, say the last 2 years, 3 years, I still enjoy metal music. Like it gets me fired up to like, let's pick up some heavy weight. Like, let's go to that, primal place where like, I'm going to do it. Right. Like I'm going to pick up 120-pound dumbbells, and people are like, why are you doing this? And I'm like, I have no other reason other than I want to. And then
backed out, yeah.
My ears are bleeding because I'm listening to death metal. Right. But when you really take the time to acknowledge the truth of the things that we're ingesting consciously and subconsciously, a lot of death metal has shifted to where, I'm going to stop saying death metal. A lot of metal music has shifted, whether it's really extremely heavy or on the lighter end, where they do talk about more like empowerment and more of like break out of the system. And the system could be like working the 9 to 5, or it could be like the depression or the issues that you're dealing with from a traumatic experience or whatever it is. Or it could be like, hey, you should kill yourself. And like
That's a
it
dangerous
sounds
thing to listen to
right.
over and over again. Yeah.
It literally sounds comical. Like I want to chuckle at that, but it's the like the serious side of it is there's music out there that I'm like, dude, the instrumental aspect of it is mind-blowingly awesome. But when you realize that it's like, I never wanted to be alive, I'm actually attracted to the idea of like exiting this place at my own hand. There's nothing wrong with listening to that, but it's affecting you.
Yeah,
And
like
when
even if it's subconscious. And just a sidebar, like I went into a record store a few weeks ago and they also sell like vintage posters and stuff. And I was talking to the guy and, I was gonna get some new posters for my place. And he's like, yeah, I needed to redecorate mine because I just had all these horror, like dark posters. And I noticed it started to have an effect on me. Like I really like that stuff. I like horror, but I was getting depressed just like being at home because it was too dark and he needed to like change some of it out. And yeah, like if you're surrounded by only one side of the spectrum, then like you said with music, if you're listening to that song on a loop, it's eventually going to affect you. Even if
so
you're
like
trying to, yeah.
so think about all the people that are like, oh well, Sam, I don't listen to metal. Like you're a crazy person. Like, ah. I mean, even if you turn on the radio, think about how many songs are just like, oh my God, we broke up and like I can't deal with this. Like it's all over. And people are like, it is all over. Even if they're not in a breakup,
Yeah.
they're just like
You're
it
sitting
is
there
all
crying
over.
to it. Yeah.
And my point is like I'm not gonna, I feel like I should sometimes, but the reality is just like a person that, you know, my parents smoked and like it's fine. Like I don't care. They grew up in a different time, whatever. And the thing is that um people, it's very easy for them to be like, that's a really bad vice. But it's like, dude, if I ate mad amounts of Twinkies every day, that sugar and all that junk would like make me sick over time.
Yeah.
But nobody's gonna tell me like, hey, dude, you need to put down the Twinkie. They're just gonna be like,
They're a
you
danger
know,
to everyone around you. Yeah.
yeah, right. Like nobody's really being affected by me eating Twinkies, right? There's no secondhand Twinkie effect, right?
That we know of, but they're just
I
gross.
know, right? There's gonna be a study, and people are like, if your friends are eating Twinkies, get out of there while you can. And so my point is that, you know, even on the times when I'm trying to eat really healthy, I still allow myself to go get like a scoop of ice cream, right? Like it's all moderation. And so I look at that the same way with like some of the TV shows that I like, where, you know, I really enjoy the horror genre, especially during that time where everything was doom and gloom. I felt at home. When you come out of that, you're like, all right, like you watch the new Texas Chainsaw Massacre movie and you're like, okay, like I see what they're doing there. And you appreciate, because of how much you know about the horror genre, like you can appreciate what they did in terms of making a film. But I also can tell that like later that night after watching it, I went to sleep and dreamed about some guy running around with a chainsaw. Like,
Yeah, yeah. And I had this problem during the pandemic where, I mean, like when I was in more of a depressive, like kind of, not fun
trash
place.
at home.
Yeah, that whole purgatory. I couldn't watch like dramatic TV at all. Anything that was a drama or that had like death and violence, which normally wasn't a big deal, like I could not sit through more than one episode because it would just put me in this state of mind. Even like Peaky Blinders or something like that. I was like, I can't watch a marathon of that anymore because it gets too intense. And then I'm just at home thinking about Tommy Shelby fucking murking some people.
It's one of those things where, you know, I don't want to be like, for some people having this conversation, just a realistic conversation about what are we consuming and how is it affecting us. I'm the Debbie Downer. Like, why are you trying to ruin my party? Like, I enjoy, like, during two things about like quarantine was, one thing is we had all this time. Breaking Bad was on there, so neither one of us had seen it, even though it had been out for like 10 years or whatever. We binge watched it. There was one day that we watched it for like 4 or 5 hours, and I remember feeling kind of like more gloomy because like that story isn't badass. It's super sad.
It is. And like that's one where he had watched it, I hadn't watched it. And I think I only got 3 or 4 episodes in. I was like, I just can't
Mhm.
do it. Like it's a really good show, but I mentally cannot. And I think it's okay to like call it quits on that kind of stuff. If you don't have the headspace to be around that music, that movie, that TV show, then don't force yourself to, you know, watch 5 to 10 hours of it.
Yeah, one that I've had conversations with, like especially with my military buddies, is I tried to go to school immediately as I got out. So I went into the Marines, like air quotes, late. I turned 22 in boot camp. Well, when I got out, I was about 26, almost 27, I guess. And so I was around a bunch of like 18, 19, 20. There were a couple of people that were in my situation too. So like whatever. But I would hear people talk about like The Punisher. And Netflix had the Punisher show come out sometime after I got out. And I was going to school at that time. And I remember people being like, oh yeah, man, like it would be so badass to be whatever. And it's like, hey, dude, I get it, like the dream or whatever it is that you're talking about. But what was interesting is kind of when you really thought about what the character was and what that show was portraying, is like, this is a guy that his one, he had developed PTSD from, war or whatever it was. And maybe he was fine with it, but the story is like this guy developed a skill set, utilized it, whatever, but then legitimately his family ends up murdered and he snaps and goes on literally a rampage
Yeah.
of murder. And
So it shouldn't be glorified. Yeah.
I get how like it's entertaining, and I get how like, yeah, did I watch it?
But you don't want
100%.
to see the character. Like
That's my point.
that's the
Like
difference.
the falsehood of like, you really don't want that. It's glorified as a show because it needs to be appealing to watch it, but you really don't want that. And like once you acknowledge it, you go, okay, like when I'm watching this, I need to just be aware of the thin line of like recognizing it's entertainment and not some weird like bloodlust fantasy. With that being said, whenever I still watch horror movies, but I'm very specific about the ones I want to watch. It's more psychological usually, and I'm more curious about how did they write it, how were they able to portray it into film or cinema or whatever you want to call it. But then you're like, okay, well, I won't watch horror anymore. Dude, you can find it in sitcoms, you can find it in comedy, dramas, like whatever it is, it it can be detrimental to you one way or the other. And
Yeah.
it really freaked me out because during quarantine, you want to know what started popping up all over Netflix on like the top trending movies, like Contagion, and there was a movie called
Oh, I
Quarantine.
remember that. And it kept
It,
getting suggested. And I was like, why would I ever watch this during a
it
panini?
was
Like,
like,
that sounds
yeah, it was
awful.
like in 2009 they made a movie called Breakout, and you're like, well, what is that about? And they're like, everyone's got a flesh-eating disease, and
It's
it's up
the
to,
pandemic.
yeah, Ben Affleck as a teenager saving the world. I'm like, Ben Affleck wasn't a teenager in 2010. They're like, shut up.
Hard pass. Yeah. And all the like apocalyptic movies came up too. And I was like, I don't need that energy right now.
Right.
I'm really gonna take a hard pass there. And my like quote unquote toxic rebound to that has been I'm in cartoons like hardcore right now. And I have been like the whole just
I get
rewatched
it.
Adventure Time, like Steven Universe, all that good stuff. So literally like I'm just taking the opposite approach, and eventually I'll mix back in the other stuff. I like
Sure.
slowly have, but I think I guess the overall message is knowing what that stuff is for yourself and recognizing it before you get into a deep dark hole because you binge watched some horror series. I don't know one to name one. I don't know.
Any of it. It's
Saw
all
or
have you ever said to someone like hey man, how you doing? And they're like, I'm living the dream. And they're like, oh yeah, because it seems like a nightmare. And you're like, all right, well, we're done talking
oh,
here,
I've had that
Bob.
conversation in the office.
Yeah. um you know I think the point I'm saying is like, I'm not here to tell anybody what to do. It's just what's really interesting about um any kind of journey that you try to approach, right? Spiritual, physical or mental, I could find any TV show and figure out like, hey, this, like, even with Adventure Time and Steven Universe, I could watch that and be like, this is where it's messed
Yeah.
up.
And the catch is I rewatched those shows and it was the first time Steven the Universe I've never seen before, but Adventure Time I watched as a kid or like a teenager, like bits and pieces. I watched the whole thing through as an adult and the end, like the storyline, you're like, well now I'm sad. What the fuck? Like this is a deep like ending. So it does get you like basically anywhere. So
Yeah.
watch
And
out. Don't watch TV. That's what we're saying.
well, and that's what was important for me at some point, is I had to acknowledge that it wasn't just one area. It's just understanding yourself and understanding how you're
What you
processing
need.
things.
Yeah.
Well, like as you consume it, like as you're processing it, just being aware of making sure you're keeping the good things and being aware of the things that could be detrimental if you're not paying attention.
Well,
And that's really what's changed for me, is my physical awareness is really crazy. Like, this is going to be gross, but like I've literally gotten to a point because of my schedule sometimes where I have to eat dinner late, like 30 minutes before bed. And it's not a big deal to me, even though it's not bad guidance of like, don't eat right before bed, but it wasn't hurting me either because I'd have to wake up early and work out. So I would have those calories kind of there, but my stomach would still be full from eating. And I remember multiple times of becoming so aware of my body that I remember rolling over and I could feel the contents of my stomach shift, which is disgusting especially if you take the time to think about it. But I never had that as a kid. You know what I mean? Like there'd be times I was like, oh, I'm really full, but then I just blocked it out. I stopped thinking about it. I didn't care.
well, you don't think about it till it's a problem. But yeah.
It wasn't a problem. It's just like, you
Or
roll over and you're
it's
like,
noticeable. Yeah.
uh, can you imagine being a person that like, we all fart. I hate that people act like we don't have gas. I
Never
hate that.
farted
It
in
is
my
a
life.
product.
I'm a
It is a
lady. I've never
product of the
farted.
human condition. We will fart, right? You drink water, you're gonna fart. But like, can you imagine being someone that's so unaware of themselves that they're just like constantly just ripping ass at the office and everyone's like, cheese and rice, Clark,
Well,
what are you
like
doing over there?
think of someone that like they have silent farts. Maybe they've never had an audible fart, so they think they can get away with it, and they just don't. They get smells bad, but they're killing everyone around them.
Yeah. It
And
happens at the gym all the time. They're just walking around like they own the place, just gassing us. And we're like, oh my, you're mid bench press. You're trying to do a PR and you drop a
yeah,
bar on your head.
that's self-awareness. Yeah, that's a whole
Yeah.
other thing.
Dear God, how do we keep,
We always get back to pooper farts.
we set the precedence at the beginning of this podcast. You all knew what you were walking into.
You got what you got. Yeah.
And so what's interesting too, and we've touched on it before, is that hustling is not a bad thing. Like finding your grind and dedicating yourself to it and working on it is really good. But you're out of your mind if you think 24/7, 100% of the time, nonstop, don't take any breaks. It's gonna, even if it's bad for you, if you're just really trying to achieve something in a certain timeline, by all means, but you need to have something to recover, because you are gonna
like the human
suffer a
body has
consequence.
to rest, and that's physically and
Body, mind,
yeah.
spirit.
I think the mental one is the one I've had to work on like in the last few years a lot more, of
Same.
allowing myself mental rest, and not just like staring at a TV mental rest, but like go sit somewhere and like stare at a fucking duck pond or something. Like no brain cells, no thoughts, head empty. Like just
Like meditation.
yeah, I like to call it no thoughts, head empty, but
Perfect.
it's my
No, that's perfect.
version.
Because the thing about it is, and I'm right there with you. Like I think it's really funny because as my close friend circle changes and shifts, which naturally that's going to happen to you, especially as you start growing and figuring out maybe pieces of yourself you never acknowledged before, or the fact that you aren't the person you were 15 years ago. Stop pretending like you're that person if you're not. Things will change you, experiences will change you, and it's okay to change and it's okay to shift environments, right? And so as I started to go, man, I don't ever want to go back to that time where I'm grateful for it, because it led me to a point where I asked the question of how do you make life fulfilling? I think that was literally the beginning of the journey that led me to the point of having a podcast, right? The only reason
Oh,
we're
is
here
that
is
it?
because I became a no.
Sure. Yeah.
Um, but you know what I mean, right? Where, okay, well, like, how do I figure that out? And it was like, you need to talk to people that have also figured that out. So the mind thing was super duper interesting because I started to realize things about myself that have always been there that are great things. I'm grateful that I'm that way. And I think that people in my life are grateful for it. But then when I acknowledged it, I was like, yo, dude, how are you going to sustain your life until you're like 85, 100 years old, where you want to be with all your friends all the time, and any chance that you get, you'll take it. Even if that means you're going to go see, let's say, 8 different friends, 8 different situations, you're going to give them all of it, all your attention, all your energy. And at some point, you're going to be completely and utterly depleted. And then you have no way or understanding or protocol for like, how do I recharge? And it's always been, I just push myself into the end of the day. And I hope to God I'm tired enough that I pass out. And usually, if I don't dream, I don't really talk to anyone. But there's times that I'm talking to people in my sleep. And I'm being funny there, but you see what I'm saying, right? Like we don't get taught in school about how to identify our identities and
No.
then
Yeah.
what our skill sets are, right? I mean, people joke about that all the time of I'm pretty sure I took a test. I don't even remember what it said I was good at. It probably said garbage man, or maybe that was always the joke of like, hey, this is kind of roughly where your mindset would be at or where you'd be good at it. And you're like, dude, I'm 13 and you're going to try to tell me this isn't the Giver. You're not going to be like, all right, man, you're a trash man. Good luck.
That's what you do. Now go. Yeah. Yeah.
Right. Yeah. Right.
Well, we've talked about it before. I think it's freaking wild that we decide, even at 18, what we're supposed to do the rest of our life. Like, that's kind of the general idea in our part of the world is at 18, you've decided it, you're gonna go do it, and then don't change it. Like, that's just fucking it. Um, and I think we both unlearned that, and you can do whatever you want, whenever you want. You know the
yeah.
saying.
My brother and I say it all the time. There are no rules, but you will pay consequences, whether they're good or bad. I'll tell you this, and I'm not going to say her name or anything. I don't even know if she knows this podcast exists, but if she ever hears this episode, I'm pretty sure she knows who she is. But she literally, when I knew her in middle school, was like, I'm going to be a doctor. And no shit, she's a doctor now. It took her half of her life, right? But she did all of it, and she is a doctor. And to me, like, that's what she wanted. She knew she wanted it. I mean, you know those people that are like, well, what do you want to be, little Jimmy? And they're like 3 and they're like, I want to be a firefighter, and then they do it.
Well, I wanted, yeah, like I think about that though. I wanted to be a vet. Like that was my go-to answer. I was like, I like puppies and like I'll be a vet. I think about it now and be like, that sounds awful. Like good for people that are vets, but for me and like my mental health, I could not. Like
Well,
the
it'd be hard, right? Because
yeah, there's a downside. They don't tell little children that go, I want to be a vet. So when you get older, you're like, you mean I have to do that? And they're like, yeah. And then you're like, never mind. I'm good.
yeah, I mean, there's the grave reality of any job, right? Like, you want to be a firefighter to save people's lives and fight fires, but you also have to deal with a lot of homeless people that get sick because you're also like a EMT, right? Or you have to deal with
People you can't
people,
save. Yeah.
right? Like smoke inhalation and fires is wicked. I looked into it one time because I read this story and I was like, geez, like that fast. And then the other thing is how fast like all that smoke accumulates indoors.
Yeah.
Anyway, I don't want to go down that rabbit hole. It's horrific. But you're 100% right. And the other thing too that's kind of crazy is that they're always kind of enticing you, even at a young age, to, well, what do you want to be? What do you want to do? And I'm not going to go into extreme details about who or what or how it really affected me, but it's an example that I share with people now that I realize the importance of it. But even your own family could be the person that kills your dreams. And like, I remember being pretty young, probably pre-middle school or like 6th grade area. I was young. It was 6th grade or less. And I remember being like, man, I want to be an Olympic runner. like I love running, and I was a very hyperactive, very energized kid, and I was fast. Like I used to love playing, tag all the time. I have like a really fun memory, which we all know memories are usually deceiving at a certain point. But when I was really young, I remember almost everyone on the playground yard were chasing me because I was like, none of you can touch me, and I was fast.
Fast fuck boy.
But then yeah, 100%. Like I was the meme before the meme. And of course, they ganged up on me and beat me to a living pulp. And, I was
Yeah.
in the hospital
Those
for, no, I'm
characters.
kidding.
Yeah.
Yeah. They broke every bone in my body. But I used to be really fast. And so I was like, yo, dude, like, how far could I take it? And like the dream aspect of it was like, dude, go be like an Olympic runner. And I'll never forget when the person said to me and where I was of like, well, it's a little late for that. Like you would have to start when you're like 5.
Yeah. And you tell
Like,
tell a child that, yeah.
bro, like straight up. And I'll never forget that. I'll never forget the time that it was like, you know what I really want? I want to be a millionaire. And it wasn't because I was like, ooh, I want a lot of money and a Lamborghini. I wanted to be the person that it was like, hey mom, like
That
you never
broke
have to
out of
work.
it. Yeah.
Bro, hey mom, you'll never have to work another day in your life. Hey everybody, come have Thanksgiving at my house. It's on me. Check this out. Like we all get a drone for Christmas, like whatever it was. Like I just wanted to
Yeah.
be able to go, money equaled freedom even when I was a kid. And you know what they said? Oh yeah, there's no way you'll ever be able to accomplish that. Like that's not what we are. And I was too young to understand that, those are projections, right? And we're obviously coming off the topic of health, but
But it affects mental
where
health. Like it can start from a young age. Yeah.
where things really shifted for me is when I started reading books and started having information. And the same thing that I guess, all the way back to the hustle thing. And the reason I brought it up was there have been times my brother, John, had to go, well, hey man, if you've been reading like hours and hours a day or listening to Audible for hours and hours a day, and you're like, dear God, I need a moment. Like I need some like Britney Spears, oops, I did it again. Like I just need some mindless music playing or some like
Just
silence,
turn it
right?
all
And
off. Yeah. Yeah.
turn the book off. You don't have to be going 100% all the time. But I mean, if you can push yourself and do it without, breaking yourself, or I guess ultimately like
You have to be
ruining
like
your life.
you have to be very honest with yourself. Is something else suffering because I'm doing this?
Is it
Or
worth the sacrifice? Yeah.
yeah,
I mean,
it's the cost,
there are
it's the cost
people,
thing again. Yeah.
yeah, there are people who are like, yeah, dude, I wanted to be a lawyer, and like I had to study all the time because I'm an idiot, and the only way I was going to do it is by repetition. And they're like, I make a lot of money and whatever, but like I don't know my family. I didn't watch my kids grow up, and they had to sacrifice that to get to where they're going. A lot of people would tell you like, well, that's stupid.
It
You're
depends on
only
your
here,
dream and your goals. Yeah.
you're only here for a brief period of time. And I'll tell you, this whole thing's just kind of, I always joke and say it's a simulation, but I think at the end of the line, whenever, this meat suit or this Iron Man suit, mech suit, whatever I like to call it, one day, you blink, you get to see your whole life, and you realize that it was just like a breath in the wind. And
Yeah.
it's kind of a beautiful thing, man, because
Oh, it's terrifying for me. We're on different ends of that spectrum. But sure, a terrifyingly beautiful thing. But it's a good reminder of like, just do what makes you happy and decide what costs are worth that happiness. And that's in
I
health and in dreams. Yeah.
so I do want to touch on it just because I meant what I said before of like the trifecta, if you will, of it's mind, body, and soul. And so I say spirituality, but I've gotten the pleasure ever since I was a kid of people would invite me from school all the time to go to like their church. And my parents were cool enough of like, yeah, dude, like either we'll get you there or if they're cool with picking you up. And I did. I got to experience so many different religions from so many different people and cultures. And I mean, I won't lie to you, I didn't understand. There were several times that I would be standing in a room full of people and be like, what are we doing? Like, what? And it wasn't a bad thing. I just really didn't understand because
Yeah.
there would be churches where everybody's like hands in the air and they're screaming and cheering, and there's someone with a guitar and singing, and people are having experiences. And I'm like, well, what does that mean? Like, why am I not feeling that way?
Yeah.
There's other times that I sat there for 3.5 hours and I was like at a sermon, and you're just, how long
Asleep.
does this
Yeah.
Well, I didn't want to be rude, but I never really had like I guess a dedication
Religious,
or
like,
yeah, a
yeah.
devotion to a religion. But I've been very grateful that I touched on all of it because I think they all kind of say the same thing in some form or fashion. I mean, even like books of Buddhism that I've read, it's ultimately like the answer is like loving people. And what's really funny about that is I have a friend that I grew up with. I've known her since I was like 4 or 5, and she didn't even flinch. Hey man, I don't know what to do. First thing you need to do is figure out how to love all of it, everything. You're stuck in traffic, love it, right? And she makes a great point. And what I eventually figured out, talking to people like her, reading these books and stuff, is that we sometimes misunderstand things that we learn when we're kids that lead us to think it's selfish to love and have compassion for yourself. And so at the age of 34, go me, just made it there. At the age of 34, I'm still pretty unsure of how to make that a daily habit routine
I don't think
or what
anyone
it looks
knows
like.
though. It's a constant learning kind of thing.
I would agree with you. It's always like I'm never gonna have like I'm done learning how to be
I am
compassionate. But
enlightened and I'm
that's
finished.
right. But there are people that maybe they learned it from their family, or maybe they picked up on it early enough, or whatever it is, where they did learn how to do that. And for some reason I didn't. Or I didn't know that there were things that I did for myself that were compassion, because maybe I was taught that they were bad things when really, there was just people shitting on me for a long time in my life. Um, and that's okay. Like, you don't have to take it personally, but all I'm saying is that spirituality doesn't have to be religion, but it also can be religion for some people.
Yeah, yeah.
You want to join a cult and drink the Kool-Aid and like whatever.
Well, you took it to an extreme. Not all religion is a cult, but yeah, you could drink the Kool-Aid if you wanted
I'm
to. That makes you feel
I'm
connected.
look,
Buy the
man.
matching robe.
Yeah, I don't understand how that happened. And I know there's documentaries and stuff, but I kind of avoid those because, again, where I can watch a horror movie and be like, it's not real, it still affects me in a dark way. I can't imagine if I was watching documentaries about, what was it in Waco when that happened? The
Oh,
Waco
there's been
whatever
Waco's one of like many. Waco's the more violent ending to a cult, but there's
with
also
the
heaven
guns.
gate and like yeah, with the gun cult. But the Kool-Aid one, Jonestown was
That's the one.
yeah, that was the bad one. I've
Because
watched them
they
all. That's the weird thing is I can watch true crime and like cult stuff all day. And then I'm like, I'm good. I can sleep at night. But like a Peaky Blinders fake like dramatic show,
curb
I'm like
stop.
too much to this fictional character. Yeah.
It's strange to see how we get conditioned and how we have these weird tolerances. But if you dig deep enough, you know, you'll find answers, because I think there's two things I really try to remind myself, maybe three things on a daily basis, because I really don't want to lose focus on it. It's like, be grateful every day, right? Your life doesn't have to be perfect. Is there such thing as perfect? No. So try to be grateful every day. And that's all three of them, Um,
I was like in my head, like, wait, did I miss?
no, I kind of lost my train of thought. I'm not gonna lie to you. There's like a squirrel cult outside in this tree
Speaking of
all
cult,
morning.
yeah.
Literally distracted me and I lost my train of thought. So that was going to be a really cool
I like how
segue, but
the trope for ADHD is like a dog seeing a squirrel, and then like you literally have
yeah,
squirrels.
welcome to my world, right? Um, I think that's why I have such a connection with squirrels, guys, is like,
You get it. Yeah.
um, no, but for real, the grateful thing is real. There are no rules, but there are consequences, right? Like, you don't have to confine yourself to anything. Like, even if you're like, hey, I'm a Baptist, and there's obviously like a written word and like guidelines, but you still are unique as an individual. Like, no matter how you experience God, whatever God is to you, it's your relationship, because oh, that's what the third thing was, is all the answers you're looking for are within you. like I know that to be true. A lot of people would agree with me. And I think where it gets crazy is it kind of depends on how you interpret it, right? Of, oh, okay, so you're going to solve this calculus problem, Sam. The answer's within you. Okay, well, no, I'm not good at math. Thanks. I appreciate you putting that out on the podcast, right? It doesn't mean that we don't need mentorship and we need help and whatever, but the things that you're seeking, it's within you, right?
It's
Because
self-work. Like you do need to, you can't, everything can't be external, like school or religion or something telling you what to do. You have to do
exactly,
something with that information and then do
for
something with
yourself.
like your own, like your story in a way. We all tell ourselves a story about our life. Like there's some facts, some is just a memory, but you have to piece all that together and have an output basically. Like you
Yeah.
have to have like this is what I am because of this, and then all that shit stirred up, and then here we go.
Yeah. I think when I had that I've started practicing talking out loud to myself because it is a different kind of hit and acknowledgement whenever it's not just in your head. And when I had to acknowledge out loud to myself, maybe you really don't love yourself. And it's like, why is that? That was pretty painful, And I did that to myself, but it allowed me to go, all right, well, like, let's process that. And I'm not saying therapy isn't necessary. Like I 100% think that it helps a lot of people, but there's also people like myself where I'm like, I can't afford that right now, so I'm not going to spend the money. And it's an excuse not to go deal with that because I'm probably ultimately, especially in my subconscious, terrified of it. Absolutely terrified of it. Whatever, I'll deal with that later.
The
But
future though.
yeah, like when it gets real bad, right? But you have a point of, you got to at some point acknowledge what the actual brutal truth of yourself is and what do you really want, because we're conditioned to try to fit. And like with ADHD, one of the skill sets that you develop is like masking so that you can try to pretend like you're normal.
Yeah.
Well, sometimes that worked and sometimes it really didn't, because I was such a freaking weirdo that people were like, oh my God, but I turned it into comedy. And then it was like, haha, who's the joke now? Right. um but everything's always ever evolving and temporary, and you have a choice to look at how incredible that can be and how many opportunities you have in life once you start receiving them. Or you can do what I did for a very long time, and I still do it sometimes, where I don't mean it from a depressing doom and gloom place, but I'll be like, none of it really matters, so stop taking it so seriously.
Well, just not letting it own you. Like it's
Right.
not, it doesn't define who you are. Maybe it's a part of you, but it's not the
Right.
whole thing. Yeah.
But saying none of it matters definitely affects you and the people around you, because they're like, oh, okay, cool, so
But
like I
you
don't
can
matter,
choose
or
what
like,
matters.
right.
Choose what matters. Yeah.
And it's all, strangely enough, I don't feel this all the time, but it's all gonna be okay. I mean,
Well,
at
if
one
it's
point
not okay, it's not the end because then you're dead, and it's still okay. You're just dead. Like,
right.
it's a dark
It,
way to look at it, but someone said that to me at some point. Like, if it's not okay, it's not the end. Because it could be awful, but eventually, if we're gonna get real dark, you're just not gonna be there, which is also okay, even
yeah.
though it's scary. Yeah.
the
I'm
the
not saying
strangest,
die, but like,
right, the strangest thing that happened, because I did start focusing on spirituality and understanding whatever it is that I like to call it, like the essence of your being. Like I in my brain I picture it as a soul. But when I started thinking about that and like, okay, how do I try to understand my soul? And I read some books that talked about enlightenment. And then that led me to a path where I haven't like deep dived into it, but someone talked about their experience getting to the point of enlightenment, and then realizing that enlightenment was just the first step of this whole other thing that no one ever even, enlightenment is the thing that gets thrown around. Like, I think I one time when I was younger said I was enlightened, and they're like, you don't even know what that means. And when they pointed it out, I was like, oh, I'm not enlightened. I have no idea what that is. I didn't know. And someone had audacity to be like, hey, dude, like, you don't know, I'm just going to inform you on that. And it was really strange because then, people talk about the afterlife, and we all kind of feel a certain way about certain things and whatever. But for the first time in my life, I went, there's something else outside of this. And then I went, okay, I'm going to close that door for a little bit. I'll touch base on that later.
I just
Next
imagine
time
me
on Friends of
freaking it up
Failure.
and like, oh God.
It was something that I think everything happens for a reason. So it happened, but I definitely have a visual memory of me, metaphorically walking up to this door and going like, no kidding. And I kind of like listened and went, okie dokie. And I shut the door and I took a few steps back. I might have even did a complete about face and walked the other
Like,
direction
nope.
a little bit. Yeah, dude.
I think we're gonna have to name this episode Mind, Body, and Soul, because
I'd be
started
cool
out
with
with
that.
body, but it's the full enchilada. Yeah.
Well, and I don't even know how much we actually talked about how we failed and learned from it, but obviously, the
It's in
thing
there.
about talking, yeah, well, the thing about talking about failure is it's not like a defined, like, this is A, this is B, it equals C. It's literally having the conversation from the perspective of what you learned and kind of how it got you there. So,
Part of the
that's some,
journey. Yeah, it's not just going, I failed here and then I failed there and then I was successful here. But that's
and
the
I
whole
think
point. Yeah.
I think if there's a single person listening that's been there from the beginning, they probably would agree that we are growing as two podcasters. But it's a part of the journey, man. Like, we definitely aren't perfect and we're figuring it out. But if you take one thing from this, we're on social media, right?
Well, also, like, I'm realizing this episode is both deep and then also about poop. So, like, we've really just, that's a talent
Cool.
in itself. I don't know how we manage that.
I
Mind,
enjoyed
body,
it.
soul, and shit.
That's right. Oh my god, what is the shit part? This is like the most listened episode. Oh no. But I actually wouldn't be against that. I feel we've gotten very real. It wasn't that we didn't want to be real before, but we've already joked about this before. Like episode 1, especially knowing that I was going to be on YouTube and people could see it, I was like, just don't move, don't like. I'll never forget being like, for the love of God, don't burp, don't fart, don't
Well,
breathe, don't.
we were both nervous and then like no one watched it in the beginning, so it's not a big deal. But I talked to a friend the other day about it and I was like, I just pretend like it's not public. Like that, like I post it and then I'm like, well, that's done, not thinking about that again, and then just move on.
Yeah,
Yeah.
there's pictures of me out there like from high school that someone like uploaded years later and put on their Facebook, where I'm like breakdancing on like a table at high school, and it's like,
I'm proud of that. Yeah.
well, like if I'm at a job interview, I'm like, oh dear God, what if they find that? Like they're like, oh, do we want some guy breakdancing on our tables or whatever I was
I
doing?
highly doubt that would hold you back. They'd be like, this is a cool guy, real cool guy.
We need to get him some shades. Well, with that being said, I mean, do you just want to do it like that? Hey, we're on social, email us.
Yeah, you're doing it for me right now.
You want to
You can,
beatbox and I'll just wrap it up?
nah, not yet. We'll save that for like the 100th episode or something. We'll
Oh
take lessons.
yeah.
Yeah.
That's gonna be ridiculous. Um, you should. I mean, I at this point everyone knows we're on social media, but I think it is important that you say what our email is.
You can email us at friendsoffailurepodcast@gmail.com, and we won't answer, but we may read it. We might answer too.
We start saying things like, when are you guys gonna figure out there is no email? No.
It's just a black hole.
One day it'll happen. I think sometimes I think about it. I love the fact that it's there, but I'm sure the issue is, and why people don't do it is, what's the point? why would I go and email you guys, right? And I was like, dude, I don't know, to interact with us, like be a part of the party. And maybe that's not enough value yet. So one day.
Look at it as like venting out your failures, and someone else can learn from it instead of you just sitting on that little nugget, you know?
Yeah. Or like, have you ever wanted to jump on a podcast and speak your mind? Like, hit us up on our email. And then they're like, yeah, dude, let's do it. And I'm like, hey, it's going to be 3 months out because, you know,
3 to 6
people
months.
know. Yeah. It's going to be in the next 5 years.
We'll see you in 2027.
Well, hey, I had a really good time. I always do. I love how, you know, natural we've gotten with it. And hopefully, you know, you guys listening, you know, enjoyed it. But, you know, thank you for listening. One fun thing about doing a podcast, and it's on Zoom and we're able to do it from wherever we are, is I'm literally about to go back to work. Like I just did a podcast and now I'm going back to work.
Yeah, I get to go see my nephew, not literally get brought into this world the next day. Yeah.
Isn't that crazy?
A little crazy.
Crazy awesome, right?
Yeah. In a good way. Good crazy.
Yeah. All right. Well, with that being said, we would love to leave you with our final thought. And that is, life is happening for you, not to you. So go out there and do something.
There we go.
Like poop out a baby. No. Cut.
If it's not I'm stronger than you, it's I'm wiser than you, I'm more loving than you, I'm more tolerant than you, I'm more sophisticated than you. It doesn't matter what it is, but this constant competition is going on. This is the secret. This is the secret. You can't make a mistake.